Yo, 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 what is up? Happy Monday, everybody. It is lunchtime or brunch time on this beautiful Monday. Jim, it's crisp. Fall is in the air. College football was at its best this past weekend. College um, basketball is getting ready to start. Memphis got a exhibition against North Carolina this week. Major League Baseball playoffs, NFL, which I mean, I could give or take NFL right now, but obviously a lot to unpack.
Do
And
you talk NFL when both our teams get taken to the woodshed?
I mean, it is. Yesterday was just rough, and I knew how it was going to go, and that's the sad part. But
We're
I
we're
think
gonna talk NFL, but I got a question for you. Is it worse to just get beat all game and already know you're gonna lose, or is it worse to have the lead at halftime and then get absolutely smacked down in the second half and get beat down?
I'll answer that question when we go through it because I have a take on the Saints and Spencer Rattler and why the second half was the way it is. But that's kind of gets us into our conversation there. So I don't want to give too much away. But to answer your question, I think that I would rather at least be in the game and have an enjoyable experience than from the jump of the game go, we're going to settle for a field goal and then it's blowout city. I mean, that's the only thing I could think of.
Bro,
But
I started cutting my mom's grass in the fourth quarter. I'll put it like that.
I mean, I'll be real with you. I had it on in the background, but I probably wasn't watching any of it because for whatever reason, and I guess maybe New Orleans is like this too. Is it's a attractive destination to go watch opposing teams play. So every time something happened, there was a loud roar. And I knew that it was just the Lions and the Lions fans just being loud. And because if anything was happening for the Cowboys, it was a boo because it was bad. There was nothing good about yesterday's game. But leading into that, let's start with baseball playoffs. We've had obviously wild card round, very explosive wild card round. We had a lot of teams take it to 5 games. But inevitably in the NL, the Mets and the Dodgers prevail, and the Yankees and the Indians are playing in the ALCS, which they'll get kicked off tonight. But yesterday, you had primetime baseball for Mets and Dodgers, and the Mets were pretty bad. They were the Mets of the first couple months of the season. Just from the jump, Otani leads off, and then they get him out, but then it's like the Mets pitcher could not find the strike zone. He ended up putting guys on, and then a base hit here, and before you know it, it's 2-0, and you've given arguably probably the odds-on favorite to win in the NL a early lead. So I'll ask you, Jim, are you I'm not surprised, but are you surprised that the Mets got beat? Not that they got beat, but the fashion that they got beat yesterday.
I mean, surprised by the fashion, but I had a theory, right? And this isn't new to us. Usually, no matter what sport, when the prior round of the postseason is as electric as it is, you get a letdown, right? The Padres and the Dodgers was everything, and so this never happened. We never get lucky in sports to get. It's the same thing in football, right? If the wild card round is amazing, conference championship won't be. It's you never get that lucky, and so I'm not surprised at all. I wouldn't be surprised, as we get into the other one if it goes that way. Daniel, my thought process was, um, you know, we're really going to have what we said we do anything not to have. Yes, it's the big names, it's the big organizations, but we root against those guys. Like I come to the reality as I look at these two series, and I'm like, we're going to have the damn Dodgers and the Yankees, and we're going to be wondering who we want to root for, like because we want them both to lose. That's what's
Would
going to happen.
would you rather it be the Mets and the Yankees?
That's a really cool thing between New York and New York. So yes.
I mean, it's something that doesn't happen that often. It's happened before, but yeah, I think if you're a baseball fan and you want the two best teams going up against each other, I think you want Yankees Dodgers. And I think there's a little bit to be said as like, you know, who has the biggest stick if you get
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like I think that's the biggest.
Well, and here's the problem, right? I told you it's hard not to root for the Dodgers because of the character of Mookie Betts and how lovable Otani is. And then insert Kiki Hernandez. Um, Anybody watching, you message me. He's a piece of trash. All right. First of all, the dude does, Daniel, he does dick bumps. I don't know how else to describe it when he hits home runs. I'm not gonna get in trouble for any words. Look, we played sports. You don't do that. And then you decide to double down after that and ask if you're on live TV to make sure to make sure you cuss for every kid that's watching to see. Bro, know your audience. And I think you're trash. And because of you, that overshadows my love and joy for Otani wanting to win.
Yeah, I was, dick bumps aside.
Have you
You
ever
know,
seen that? I've never seen that.
I mean, it is what it is. Have I seen it? Yes. Is it something I love to see? No. Is it something I participate or practice in? No. But I think with him, like it's I don't know if there was a fine or not, but there should have been. There should have been a fine on Major League Baseball's part, and there should have been a fine on the Dodgers part um, because you can't you just can't do that. I get it. You're fired up. You're passionate. It's the heat of the moment. Like it's a huge thing that happened, but like you can't ask if you're on live TV and then they say yes and then immediately go straight to the F word. Like I get it if like you're colorful in a colorful way, but like that's too much. On top of the fact like you to me like you plan that out. Like
And you know what's crazy? That is, we were talking about it in my LSU group chat. Hot Mike's General. That one, there's nothing they could have done nothing about. But that is five within like a week span. F bombs that were clear as day. Going back to the Vanderbilt quarterback, there was Geno Smith that I had seen in the Sunday night football game. Like and then it happened in another baseball game, and we were sitting there talking about it. It was like, man, these dudes are getting caught left and right, just throwing F bombs right at the TV.
yeah, like I understand like if you're not being interviewed and it's just a camera panning on you and you're on the sideline and
Yeah,
you're just like
Geno's was, they had them when he asked his team, "What the f are y'all doing?" So he didn't know it was on him. The
right.
Vandy quarterback, however, and Kiki did.
Yeah, you know, I don't like that. Like you can paint the picture however you want to paint it, create the narrative however you want to paint it of that's okay to do or I wasn't aware or whatever the case is to make yourself look better, but that's not a good look for him. It's not a good look for the team. It's definitely not a good look for baseball unless baseball does something about a fine. And to
Yeah,
me,
well,
I
and while I'm thinking about it too, because we didn't get a chance to talk last week. Another reason to root against the Dodgers is their fans throwing trash all over the field. Was that game three? Um, that yeah, like I don't know, they make it very easy. Like I said, all season it's been lovable because you root for Otani. Mookie Betts is the constant professional, but at the end of the day, the Dodgers are going to Dodger. The fans are going to be the fans, and it's just like they got all this money, and you just don't want them to win. And then, like I said, it's the same thing on the flip side. And I thought, honestly, thought the only chance, and I'm not trying to disregard the Guardians. I thought the best chance was going to be if Detroit, because Scooball had been absolutely unbeatable and finally in the fifth inning, because he was money through the first four against the Guardians, they finally got to him, and so Cleveland's been good all year. You can't count them out, but I don't know, man. The Yankees just they've finally done what we've talked about. Like they've done postseason the way they're supposed to.
Yeah, and I think tonight's going to be, the big telling story is, are they ready to be the team that they've claimed to be or prepared to be or created? Because the Guardians, in my opinion, they're going in with nothing to lose. Yeah, I mean they won their division. They're a good team. They earned their way into the playoffs. But when you look at them too, like, it's definitely a David versus Goliath matchup. And I don't think that the Yankees might see it that way, but I think the Guardians are going into it with a little chip on their shoulder, with a little something extra to play for. And if the Yankees don't come out and get after it, the Guardians will win
Mhm.
because they play team baseball. They can pitch it. They can swing it well enough to keep the game close, and it's going to come down to bullpen and pitching and keeping runners off second base.
I do have a positional question for her. Not actually, because he doesn't play; he's just DHs. Man, I don't think that you know a home run here and there by Stanton is worth basically a guaranteed double play if there's somebody on base. The dude can't run to first. Like he had what should have been a single because the third baseman had to completely lay out to the line one play. He ends up still getting out. Like he got doubled up multiple times. Like the dude athletic ability to run is no longer there for whatever injury purpose. I don't know I can have a guy that much of a liability. He ain't hitting good enough to do it.
Yeah, the problem is he can also put balls over the fence. And when you have that, you got to be able to capitalize on times when people are on base, and he's a guy who can do that. And they're not paying him to leg out balls in the gap. They're not paying him to run out singles or extend, balls in the gap to doubles or score from first base. They're paying him to hit gap to gap, score runs, and put the ball over the fence. So,
I just look, all I know is I'm 40 years old. I've never been a professional athlete, and me and him could lace him up and line it up, and I would absolutely dust his ass to first. And that's a problem.
well, a lot of it is too is how how hard is he really pushing? Like these guys, when it comes to like hitting the baseball, like they're not like in certain situations, they're not really busting it out of the box to get anywhere. And I think him in a routine play, he's not really busting it out of the box to do anything. So, same thing for a pop up or, a ball that he feels like is going to be caught in the outfield. He's probably not pushing that hard. Um, what he does need to do is he needs to take notes from Freddie Freeman, who scored from second base last night on a ball that was hit, just a base hit with a bum ankle. He needs to take notes from him because he was getting after it. It didn't look good. It didn't look pretty, but he got the job done.
It don't got to. It was no different than I forgot what or which guest from Pros and Joes was talking about Otani and how he's not even actually that fast. It's his ability to read the pitcher and take off at the right time. Everything when you look at baseball, a lot of that is, and that's Freddie, right? Identifying the situation, the jump at the right time, all that stuff. Like it's not even necessarily always about speed. And then just like you talked about with Stanton, it's about effort and energy. It's not even the fact that he's not fast. All those elements always come into play. But I just know, like, I want them. I'm conflicted. I want them both to lose, but I also want the best possible World Series. So I don't know what I want. But if we're doing a pick 'em today, like, give me the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Yeah, I don't. I'll say this. I think last night's game. I think the Mets have a chance, and the reason being is because they've been on this high and they've been riding this wave. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when they got into the playoffs. Like, that's a big thing. I think for them, if they can get on the board early and see some positivity and maybe have a lead early in a game, maybe game two, that they can probably ride some more energy and get things going again. And if I'm the Dodgers, you can't let those guys beat you in a game, because that's the confidence they need to go, oh, well, we can hang with these guys. They're not nothing. And game two is going to be telling, because if they don't win, if the Dodgers don't win, they're going to go to New York and it's going to be even tougher and the pressure's going to be on. And it's just
I do think
more
New York.
eyes.
You bring that up. I do think Citi Field. I believe that's one of the atmospheres where you have home field advantage. The fans at Citi Field are nice.
Yeah. I mean, it's playoff baseball too. Those guys have been eating, breathing, dreaming, wishing of playoff baseball forever. And now they have the opportunity to have it
That's
after.
probably why they're so electric. I mean, watching the games, I thought that's been the best atmosphere of all the places.
I mean, Lindor is probably the opposite of Jose Altuve in the sense that, like, I get excited to watch Lindor swing the bat and play. I don't get that same excitement for Altuve because I can't stand him. So,
Hey,
but
I meet a guy. I meet a guy this weekend, and he's wearing an LSU hat and an Astros Bregman jersey, and I'm wearing my LSU stuff. And he's like, "Go Tigers!" And he starts talking to me, and he's like, "You like the Astros?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." "You like Bregman?" "I guess." "What do you mean you guess?" "I mean, I like Bregman, but he plays for the Astros, so not
he's
really."
okay. He's okay.
And
That's
so of course he asked him, he's like, "So why don't you like the Astros?" I was like, "It's very simple. They cheat."
all right. So give me your prediction. When we next week, when we go over headlines, will we be talking a continuation of the series, Dodgers Mets and Guardians Yankees, or are we going to be looking at a solid World Series?
Dodgers will have already punched their ticket. The Guardians are going to push the Yankees.
I think this time next week we're we're going to be looking and talking about game sevens for both series.
That would be ideal. Let me ask you a question that I haven't asked you yet, and I thought about it the second you said it. You did not call them the Guardians when you led off this show. You called them the Indians. If they win it all, how much will it piss you off that they are the Guardians and not the Cleveland Indians? Because I know you've got to feel some kind of way.
I mean, I think it's like most people, they're going to refer to them as the Indians just because that's just been the thing. That's
But
what
like
they.
you think about the iconic calls in those major league movies when they win, and you're gonna hear if they were the Cleveland Guardians win the World Series, and it's just gonna feel all wrong.
I mean, true.
What if the commentator just decides I'm going Indians? Screw it. I'll take the heat.
There's probably a lot of heat that comes with that. So you probably want to steer away from that. But I don't know. Yeah, it's probably a little crazy and a little, if you put your movie hat on and look at Major League and kind of go, oh man, it's kind of a non-poetic moment for the movie and the game to come full circle. But um, I'm all right with it. Guardians, whatever you want to call them, Cleveland, no ones, you name it.
Well. On that note, Daniel, before we move off baseball, been doing more and more research since talking to Scott Burke, Blake Burke's dad, diehard A's fan, and just reading into stuff. All the people who think that they're forever gone in Oakland, I want to put it out there again. There's actually nobody in Vegas with money offers to get the team. There's no stadium. There's nothing. However, there is an opportunity that if he botches this thing, the owner, then he could be removed. And with that, the Warriors owner is absolutely ready, locked and loaded, cash, duffel bags, Daniel. And he says he will put them back in Oakland and he will build them the stadium they deserve. And so, Oakland fans, man, pray that this dude continues the mess that he started and messes this thing up even worse. And they end up back in Oakland 3 years with a brand new stadium right next to Oracle. It'd be awesome.
Here's a question though: is how long can things be a mess? Can you sustain being a mess for 3 more years before something like, to me, like that's almost like a death sentence. It's like, can you be terrible, and not just terrible, but bad ownership terrible, and then the product, and then still be able to get the fan base back, get a contending product on the field, and something that people want to watch, and something that the city's like, yeah, let's build a new ballpark for that.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why, because we've seen it. We were kids, but the Browns did it. Left to Baltimore, had all the ownership issues,
Did they do it?
and that fan base is still die hard, even though they don't win crap. So the question is Oakland, is the fan base built like Cleveland? Would they want to do it? You see the Chargers, right, and they're not back in San Diego, but people just aren't about LA, especially when you have the Rams. I feel like they need to move them off there, because right now they even got a decent team and nobody still cares. So it's really all about how bitter a fan base is. It's about how, just die hard they are. But I feel like the Oakland fans, you saw how they showed up when the team was leaving. If you put a brand new team in there 3 years later, even with dysfunction, especially with a new stadium, I think that thing's packed out opener.
Hey, speaking of new stadiums, the Tampa Bay Rays, they can't get a new stadium fast enough. And I don't know if you saw the the roof of this thing, but I drove by it. What was it? Saturday. Drove by it, and it's unbelievable. Like, it is just
Well, don't you
destroyed.
love don't you love know-it-alls who are like, why would they put them there? And it was like, you tell me another place that could have held that many people. Like they didn't know the roof was going to blow off, but you had to find somewhere to set up that could actually hold that many first responders. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't put them in Raymond James. Like, what are we talking about here? Like, it was the best choice. It just happened to unfortunately go the way it did.
Well, what people don't know, because they're not here, is you have hours literally to decide what you're going to do with this hurricane. And a hurricane can change its path within minutes and an hour. But when you're staging people and you're trying to have emergency crews and things set up, you have to stage them days in advance. And days in advance, St. Pete was never the target, and
Yeah.
nor was it the target for Milton. But you had to stage them somewhere. You couldn't stage them outside. And Raymond James was being used. All the parking lots at Raymond James were being used to stage things and
Mhm.
people and
But I
aid.
meant like you couldn't put people in sleep because there's no roof, is what I was saying.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you can't. And so, like, you're very limited. So, like, you got Amalie Arena, which was being used in Tampa. You've got St. Pete. You've got, that's essentially it. That's closed. That's big enough to hold a lot of things and people. But, not to get off topic, like that, that roof, it's like, all right, well, what do you do? Because if you know you're building a stadium in 2026, a brand new stadium, and it's are you going to put in a lot of effort to reconstruct the roof of a stadium that you know you're not going to use in 2 years?
Right.
Do you
That's a waste of money.
fix it? Like, my thing is, well, if the surface itself can withstand water and okay to rain, you could technically play baseball in it without a roof. Could you not?
And I
Well,
mean, you should be able to install drainage. If not, it'd be a lot cheaper than it would be to put a new roof on. That's a fact.
I mean, I don't know how many rainouts and how many that you would get, or what the upkeep of doing something like this for the surface of the field. But if you're worried about ticket sales, I mean, nobody's going anyway.
Well,
So
I once watched my friend coach at the University of Tampa. Being that many people don't go to the Rays games anyway, just go over there and play a nice, beautiful field over there at Tampa.
I'm telling you, that would be it. Or bring them, do do some traveling, like go and sell out the Yankees, single A stadium, Steinbrenner. Go over to the Threshers where they play, and play some home games there. I mean, I think you would have to navigate the schedules of all the teams, but I think it's highly doable. Um, if not, you're going to relocate your team, or you're going to play all your games on the road. Either way, and I don't think that's a viable option. But
Right.
um, moving away from baseball, let's get into college football. LSU, big win in overtime. You watched the game. I'm not sure what your thoughts are. Do you think that LSU should have been that close? Did LSU give it to them? Did they play bad? Was Ole Miss playing well? What, from your vantage point, what did you see in regards to LSU and Ole Miss?
So many thoughts. First, obviously, new lighting system that is just synced up with the music. Whether it was Set It Off by Boosie or Colin Baton Rouge, those videos are electric. 102,000 people. Daniel, I may never forgive my daughter for the favors that I called in to get her a $350 ticket, and she didn't go as an LSU student. I think she should actually be banned as a student. Um, Maybe
Did
she
you
should go somewhere
did
more
you
like
pay
Ole.
for the ticket and she didn't go?
Yeah, because her friends couldn't get tickets, so she didn't want to go without them. And the reason they went to the previous games is because I had to buy their tickets. They were supposed to pay me back, didn't. Whole nother story. But yeah. So anyway, I tell my wife because she's like, she wants to hang out with her friends. Well, you go in the stadium. There's 102,000 other friends that you can make. You sit in the
Oh,
student
yeah.
section and have a blast. Like this isn't why you go to school there. You go to school there to get an education, but this is the second reason. And when you see that atmosphere at night against Ole Miss that you love to hate, I mean, that Colin Baton Rouge video is so electric. But shout out to the upgrades on the lighting system, and Death Valley at night played a massive role, Daniel, because I can look you straight in the face and tell you right now that Ole Miss is a lot better of a football team than LSU. If that game is at Vaught, LSU gets taken to the woodshed. On the opening drive, it drops a pass right in the pocket. Absolute dime by Jackson. Second drive, you miss a field goal, a chip shot field goal. On the third drive, your offensive line blows an assignment and lets a guy right in the backfield on 4th and 1 inside our 10. Like, these are mistakes that were happening, bang, 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 in this place. And you can tell that they were shook. This game should have been lopsided. It should have been 17-0 right out the gate. So they allowed LSU to hang around because LSU's offense looked really bad to start. Really bad.
I don't
Garrett Nussmeier was as inaccurate as I've ever seen him. And so
I don't think Jackson Dart was that good either. I don't think either one of them. I think the part of the problem with that game, and you definitely follow LSU way more than I do, but watching that game, those two quarterbacks, I've seen Nussmeier play, and I've seen him play well, and he didn't play well that game. I've seen Jackson Dart play and play well, and he didn't play well that game. And I think those two
but,
teams.
but, but for what it's worth, like I said, I mean, he threw, I'm talking about 60 yards in the air right into dude's hands. He dropped it like that. That may change the whole outlook of everything when you talk about Jackson Dart.
Yeah, I mean, he was. I just look at his QBR and his completion to attempts. I mean, he was 24 of 42. That's not good. He had
Yeah.
one touchdown, one interception, one that should have been caught. But the QBR was 52. And for Nussmeier, I mean, he wasn't much better. 22 of 51. made his passes count, though. He had 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. His QBR was 73. But either way, I think those guys, I think when you look at the tape and you look at the offenses, and I think you could probably, you can confirm this. Nussmeier has to be better than that if these guys want to do what they possibly could do.
But what are we always talking about, right? It's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Yep.
He, at the end of the fourth quarter and in overtime, was money. That throw, I messaged everybody in real time. Doesn't mean if you talk to God, it's going to go the way you want it to. But it was the coolest thing ever. My man is literally sitting there talking, doing this and pointing up, having a conversation, and then walks the line and snaps it and throws an absolute laser on the money because dude's actually got good coverage for a touchdown. And I said, "You see that? My man talked to God and he answered." And so, and then he throws the touchdown. So it's about how he finished. But if I was to point to a player on why LSU won, man, and it's so fitting that he wears number 40. Whit Weeks, the linebacker for LSU. I think he had 14 tackles, 2 for
Yeah,
loss, a sack, a
18
fumble.
total tackles, 10 solo, a sack, tackle for loss, 2 of those. Um, he he was a beast. He had 2 more total, or 2 times as many tackles as the next highest person, which was Greg Penn.
With that hair and the Jack, it reminded me of Clay Matthews in the day, right? Like flying around everywhere, just hitting everybody. And I was like, man, sign me up. And this is a dude who was asked to step up with Harold Perkins being knocked out for the season. So shout out to him. But to solidify your point about Nussmeier's got to be better. I started immediately after the come down of the celebration, super stoked. Wore my Mardi Gras suit to church because I go to church with a whole bunch of Ole Miss fans. I told people, got to be worried because I saw how much Tennessee struggled at Arkansas in that stadium. You're not going to be in Death Valley at night next week. You're gonna be in Fayetteville at night, and if you come out and struggle like that, the same way you do at Ole Miss, you're going to lose. So you need to fix all the mistakes. You need to go back to the drawing board. Nussmeier has got to be better, but at the end of the day, you got the dub. They're ranked number 8, Daniel, and this is what I'll tell people. I do not think they're the 8th best team in college football. I don't lie to myself, but I'm absolutely ecstatic they got the win. A win's a win, no matter how you do it, ugly or not. And great atmosphere, great overall game to watch.
Yeah, I enjoyed watching that game. Highly, I will say this, Saturday's games were
The
money.
the problem was there
Yeah.
was a better game at that slot, and it's hard. Like you can have 2 TVs. I had 2 TVs running, but my heart is with LSU, so it's really hard to keep my eyes completely on Oregon and Ohio State. It's a damn shame that they're at the same time because as good as LSU Ole Miss was, it wasn't the other one.
And if I watched, I would say I did a good job of flipping back and forth, and I watched a good bit of both of those 2 games. And I will say this, and take rankings out of it, but when you looked at Ohio State and Oregon play, those 2 teams are way better. And this is kind of going to your point that you think LSU is not the 8th best team in the country. Ohio State and Oregon, that game and those 2 teams were way better than
Was LSU.
LSU and Ole
No
Miss.
offense is taken. It's the truth of the matter.
And I don't know if at the beginning of the season you could say that. Maybe, because Ohio
Maybe
State's
Ohio State we could,
always
but you
up
don't
there.
with
Yeah.
Oregon.
No, I mean, Oregon was kind of like well, now they're leaving the Pac-12. Now they're going into the Big Ten. What does this mean? They're going to play a little bit more of a gauntlet
And
schedule.
you know what's cool, man? You got a kind of another Joe Burrow story developing because Dylan Gabriel couldn't play at Oklahoma, and here he is at Oregon just doing his thing.
Yep, 22 of 34, 340 something yards and a couple touchdowns, man. Just I get it. When you go to Eugene and it's a tough place to play, and being at home and being able to do that is a lot easier than if they were to go to the shoe. But I mean, even Ohio State stepped up. I mean, it was a hell of a game. I
Yeah,
enjoyed
I
that
mean,
game.
so somebody was gonna have to lose. It's one of those things. This, based upon what I've seen, like, because I haven't been impressed with Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee, right? Like, I've been sitting there like, what a year for the 12-team playoff. Like, I don't think that there's that many good, like, really good teams. But then you watch that game and you're glad because Ohio State should still have another crack at this thing, right? So that loss, and they only dropped back to 5, like, and that's good because I want to see them get a shot. They're deserving, and in prior seasons, right, that may have been enough to end your season. So that's the kind of thing that you want to see. But I kind of want to go to that, Daniel. I don't have it on the notes, but um, did Texas come into the SEC for real on a year where, like, coming in the year we thought Georgia was going to be a world beater, right? There's always the expectations of Alabama. Ole Miss was supposed to finally turn the corner. Tennessee's good, and then they all look so damn pedestrian, and it's like Texas could walk in here, win the SEC, and be like, "This is what y'all been telling us to be scared of."
Well, let's hold on just a second. Money talks, and I think Texas has a lot of money, and they've had a lot of money for a while, and it's
I
not
mean, they
like
got 2 of the top 3 highest paid NIL players at quarterback, so one doesn't even play.
right. And it wasn't like they woke up one day and said, "Okay, you're now in the SEC." This was something where they knew for 2 years that this was a move that they were gonna make, and of course, like, if you're a smart, you're going to plan for that move. That way, when you get there, you take advantage of it,
Well, they're
because if
about to
they
tell
win the
Oklahoma to do the
SEC,
same thing.
they just demolished them. It wasn't like
Oklahoma didn't get the same note about joining the SEC and becoming better.
clearly they didn't, and, hey,
But
it
you know
is
what?
it is what it
When women's sports come around, when gymnastics and softball get here, Oklahoma gonna remind them.
Uh-huh. Or I mean, there are some things that Oklahoma is clearly better at than Texas, but playing football is not one of them.
No.
Quinn Ewers, I mean, he it's like the guy didn't get hurt, and he did
Vegas baited me, man. Plus 17 and a half. I jumped all over that.
I
And they
mean,
golly, what
I
am I
think a lot of
doing?
people would've, but hey,
I mean, I was like, it's a right. My whole thought was it was my same reason that I didn't take Tennessee to cover over Florida. It was like, it's a rivalry, man. We're gonna keep it close. Like, I didn't think Texas was ever gonna lose, but 17 and a half, I was like, give it to me. It's
I
just
mean,
like the same thing with Tennessee. It was 14 and a half. And it's like taking Florida.
what you had to think is, all right, after quarter 1, Texas is losing 3 to nothing. You're like, "Oh, man, this 17 and a half, this is great. I'll take the under too." And quickly, Texas puts up 21, and at that point, like, you go into half 21-3, and you're like, "Well, that's that." And, Oklahoma just couldn't get it going, but
Daniel,
yeah,
I didn't even message you, I don't think. We always talk about losing by 1 on my parlays, but this one's all on me, boy. It was a tough pill to swallow. So I'm doing just a morning slate of games, the 11 a.m. games, and I have 7 games picked up, and I decide, you know what, you know me, I like even numbers. I was like, I'm gonna get an 8th one, and it was Toledo versus uh, freaking, I don't even remember who it was, Buffalo. Toledo -9. I was like, whatever, man. They're a favorite. They're supposed to win. Give them to me. Dude, they lost by 17, and that was the only one I lost on the 8-leg ticket. If I would have just left it, it was $780 on $10, and
what
I'm an idiot.
if by adding that game, what would the payout have been?
It literally jumped at 1,000 because it went to 1,700.
Oh, well,
That's why I like doing that.
That's the
But
gamble that
usually but usually people say to me, "Why do you have to do 8? If you do less, you'll win." And I tell them it's not ever the last one I add on. Like, the time that I lost the 10-leg one and LSU baseball didn't cover the 1.5. LSU was the first one I put on the ticket, so it wouldn't matter. In this particular case, that's why I'm telling the story. It was the last one. It had no business being added because I know nothing about Toledo football. And so I'm taking the ownership on this one. So I have that one in my second parlay. Obviously, Oklahoma kills it, and then we'll get to NFL later. But I had a 14-leg one that I only put $5. I did the anytime touchdowns. I did the prop bets, right? Anyway, I haven't looked at it yet. It's still sitting on my counter because I'm mad because I'm pretty sure I'm almost 100% sure I got 13 out of 14, and the only one I missed was Saquon Barkley not getting the anytime touchdown, and so I'm pretty sick about it because that one paid like 4,000.
Oh, man. Tell these guys to do better. I don't know.
It's just, all 3 tickets are going to be one, I think, dude. Like I just can't get it. Oh,
That'd be a mighty big payout to win
flip
them
it,
all.
flip it, and talk about Memphis.
All right, let's talk Memphis. It is a strange occurrence, like it's just a strange week leading into the game itself, the what transpired and making the game happen. Because if you were to ask people on Monday, Tuesday before the game, were they going to play? The answer was a resounding no. However, the American had other plans. They postponed the game, which was supposed to take place on Friday, moved it to Saturday because if it's a disaster on Friday because of a Category 4 hurricane, it'll probably be that much better on Saturday. All right, which is just dumb. They ended up making the decision to move the game to Orlando to Camping World Stadium. All right, that's where this Citrus Bowl is played.
And out of curiosity, no hurricane comes through, and it's at South Florida. You're at this game, right?
Oh yeah, 100%. We're ready. We're locked, loaded, ready to go. We had decided to, depending on if they kept the game in Tampa for Saturday, we were like, you know what? We'll probably at that point want to get out of the house and we'll probably still go to the game. And we were going to take the girls and just go and have a good time and let them run around. We knew there wouldn't be a lot of people there and just make the best of it because there's been some pretty crummy things that have happened over the past 2 weeks in the Tampa Bay area. So then they moved the game to Orlando, and it's definitely out of the picture. And plus, I mean, just clean up and my parents and helping people, like it just Saturday wasn't in the cards to even drive up to Orlando to go. Given the scenario, I mean, the Tigers pick up a win. That's first and foremost. You hear me talk about that. As good or as bad as they play, it doesn't matter as long as they're winning. And they pick up a win, 21-3. Nothing crazy sticks out. I mean, obviously, to me, the offense isn't humming like we anticipated it, but the defense holds them to 3 points. And yes, you're working with South Florida's backup quarterback, Bryce Archie, who was okay, serviceable. I mean, he did as expected, 22 of 41, 230 yards. I mean, he had 1 interception. But when you're asked to come up against a Memphis defense that has gotten better since Navy, it's a tough task. Seth on the flip side, 28 of 40, 208 yards. He had 2 touchdowns and an interception. So he gets back on the board, didn't throw a touchdown against MTSU, had his streak broken, and now, gets back on the board with 2. The rushing game, BT back on it. Brandon Thomas back, looking good. 13 carries, 67 yards. Mario Anderson looking good. But when I look at it, it just something seems off in the offense. And maybe that's just I need to get rid of the Navy game and just be like, look, they're playing matchups. And this matchup is a little bit different just based on You have a different quarterback than what you probably prepared for, and you have all this uncertainty around the game. So I don't know really what to think. I just know that we won the game, and that's what we got to keep doing, which is winning the game. On the flip side, I'll say that Navy and Army won their games. Well, Army won. I don't know if Navy played, but either way,
Both
they're
ranked for the first time since like 1940 or something.
both ranked. And I kept looking at their schedules to see if there's any holes. Obviously, Navy has to take on Notre Dame. And I think whether they win or lose that game, I don't think it's going to make a big difference at all. Obviously, they want to go in and win, and I think they can win based on what I've seen them do. But Army's schedule is pretty cupcakey, and I'm really worried that they don't lose a single game. And I don't really know how good Army is, but I know that they're not really going to be challenged, you know. So I'll ask you, man, based on what Memphis has done last week against MTSU or 2 weeks ago against MTSU, and then this week against USF, they won both games, but to me, it wasn't smooth. It didn't, something looks off, but I'll ask you, am I overreacting in that, or wins are wins, or do you agree that something isn't right?
Kind of both, but I listened to the radio this morning and they said because of the changes and everything this week and all the things, um, they're giving it a pass. Like I said, they jumped all over them with 14 real quick, and then the rest of the game was not memorable, and it took defense to score. Um, so I could go with what they said, and I could also say not scoring again offensively is a real problem. So I'm good with how you feel about it either way. I didn't get to lay my eyes on it to know, but I know that the way I think about Memphis's offense, if you tell me that they don't score offensively again, there's a problem, especially when you have the playmakers you do in Seth Hennigan at quarterback.
I think a lot of it is Sutton's hurt, and that's a big deal. And Rock Taylor, I, my assumption is he's getting a lot of attention from defenses, and that opens up holes for you know you know tight ends and slot receivers, and it really makes Rock's job a lot difficult. But maybe that is, he understands that, and he's just pulling the double coverage and allowing these other guys to be open. But I don't think he's getting the ball like I think he should, and there's probably reasons to that is scheme based. But I would love to see Rock Taylor come out with a big game, just a 100-yard receiving game with a couple touchdowns, and just to know that him and Seth are still on the same page. Because there are times where I think Seth tries to force him the ball, and it's almost like we're doing too much. But I think scheme wise, couldn't we develop something on the offensive end that puts Rock in a position where he's able to make plays? And maybe that's coming with time and coming with the team, but that's what I would like to see. And I think that would help quell a lot of the emotions that Tiger fans are having, is if they saw some of those similarities to what the offense could have been or what it was in previous seasons. And I know, totally different team, and coordinators are coming and going, but we got to have like some reassurance. And right now, I think that's the one thing that's lacking, is just reassurance that we got this. And maybe the wins are the reassurance, and we just need to get over it. But that's kind of what I see. We're winning games. I'm good with that. So we just got to keep the trend moving forward, and whatever the other teams do, they
A
do.
lot of teams that lost this week that would be happy with a win.
I get it. I get it. We talked Oregon, Ohio State. We talked Texas, Oklahoma. Not a whole lot, but looking at what's on deck. Big one for Alabama and Tennessee, really. Alabama needs this game to stay, in my opinion, in contention, and Tennessee needs it to stay in contention. But also, Tennessee really needs this game to solidify that they're moving to the upper echelon of the league. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think when you look at this game, I'm double checking right now. I know for a fact Alabama should win every game afterwards. So I feel like if Alabama wins this game, they'll solidify themselves in the college football playoff. Uh, it may be the same for because Tennessee's got Kentucky, Mississippi. Oh, they still got Georgia though. Okay, so bigger game for Tennessee than to me because they still got Georgia looming, and they need to get this one because I think if you win this one but were to lose to Georgia, I think you still can get in with those two losses. And if Georgia remains and rolls to one loss, but then you got Georgia against Texas week. So I don't know. There's a lot of determining factors. I mean, college football got exactly what it wanted with a 12-team playoff and chaos because man, there's no telling who's going to be in. Like, it's an interesting year because if this was the year we were just talking about it earlier, this was the year of the BCS. We know who our two teams are, right? Like, we don't even got to do this anymore.
Yeah.
But man, it could be any combination of the 12. But I think Tennessee needs this more because of that Georgia game. Alabama wins this. I think they're basically going to cruise into being in the college football playoff. You have to feel good that it's at Tennessee, but then again, you look at the last game. The question I got for you: Dylan Sampson has had 100 yards rushing plus 5 of 6 games. It's not on him; it's on Nico. Do you think he was way overhyped?
It looks that way, but I mean, hype is a funny thing. Like, is he a good player? I'll ask you, is he a good player?
Yeah, he's got. I mean, he's got a lot of growing to do.
Right. But I think also, like, when you look at the conference that they play in, look at the caliber of teams that they play in, and kind of look at the results, like, it's understandable. Like, you're playing against the best of the best, and it's not just
But here's the problem:
games in the season, it's every weekend. Like, you got to
when
be
you
the
pick
best.
most teams, Daniel, though, here's the problem. When you pick most teams, yeah, all 3 phases matter, but a lot of times you'll pick a game solely based on who's at quarterback. And when I look at Jalen Milroe against Nico, like, it makes me want to pick Alabama all day long.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe this weekend you change your mind on that.
Well, I mean, I want Tennessee to win no matter what because our boy Dylan Sampson's in the backfield. But I don't know. There's a chance that this one could get loose like Ole Miss and LSU did, and no telling what'll happen.
Do you think Georgia beats Texas and just creates a little bit of chaos in the SEC? I mean, it's gonna
I want that,
around,
but Georgia, I mean, Mississippi State gave them all they wanted, and you'd say, well, maybe they got caught looking ahead, but they didn't look good the week before either. Georgia just hasn't looked to be the team that we thought. Meanwhile, Texas has got this thing on cruise control, and they're going to be at home. Like, I want that to happen, but I have a feeling that the Texas is gonna win. I'm not saying they're going to beat the mess out of Georgia by no stretch of imagination, but I don't think they're going to get pushed to the brink.
What's your take on Kirby Smart pushing opposing team's player?
I mean, you don't touch players, period. So you sure don't touch the other teams.
So let me ask you this: does that warrant a suspension?
Yes, and people have been calling for it, saying the SEC is making it clear they're going to wait till after this game because they don't want anything that could prohibit this game from matching up to the best of its ability or any excuses or anything. And
What's your
that's
take? What's your take on that? Is that obviously
it's probably truth, and that's the difference between the NCAA and the NFL. The NFL doesn't do that. The rules are the rules, and as soon as they can get a ruling across, it's enforced. I don't like trying to, you know what, he did it. He should be punished for it. Like, I don't care who they got to play next. So yeah, I think he should be suspended. How many games? I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I don't know what the stuff on that. To me, on just how I feel about it, I would say 2 games.
Now, let me see if I can and make this go full circle, and I'll see if you agree with this. Because some people think that the reason that Georgia players behave off the field the way they do is because of the coach and situations like this because he's unhinged, so the players are unhinged.
Absolutely.
Do you make that connection?
Yeah, I can absolutely make that connection. And I don't know if you saw it in real time. We never got a chance to talk about it. Let me tell you something. I don't know if you saw when Alabama was fixing to lose to Vanderbilt and it was going to the kneel down sections. Number 13 was making it clear how disgruntled he was as he was getting in every one of his teammates' face, pointing fingers, yelling. And then when Vandy went to line up on the ball, he kicked it and got an unsportsmanlike penalty. And the worst part was not only did he not get yanked from the game, he stayed in there and kept doing it. Nick Saban would have absolutely drilled his ass. I guarantee you, he probably wouldn't have played in the next game either. That dude, that's where coaches have to step in, and that's where you're a reflection of people. If your players act like that, that's a problem on or off the field.
Yeah, I here's my take in situations like that. If your players are doing stuff like that on the field, that means they're undisciplined in a place where there is a lot of structure and a lot of discipline. It really makes me question you as a person when you don't have structure and you don't have discipline and nobody holding your hand like in the real world. Like, how do you behave there?
And
And
I'll tell you, did you see the Tennessee player that shoved the fan?
no,
Okay, he absolutely huge man. I'm assuming he was like a D lineman. Um, Absolutely shoves a fan that had stormed the field, and threw them, and apologized and said that's not his character. Even Ellie, who's been on this show multiple times, says that's not his character. Hey, it may not be his character, man. We're talking, to me, that's like, as a player, that's like a 4 game suspension. The guy, it's not like one of those instances where like the fan ran into him. The fan was just walking by him, and
yeah,
he just took out his frustration.
that's uncalled for. Whether that's in your character or not, that you just can't do that. And I think going back to Kirby Smart as the leader of the program, you can't do that. And I
Which
think
is why you have to set the example, right? I mean, what are you telling the players if you don't punish the coach?
if if he was smart, he would self-impose and take the power away from it because if he self-imposes a 1 game suspension on himself, okay, I still think he's just doing it to save face, but I can get with that over waiting for NCAA, who probably ain't gonna do anything. Oh, by the way, NCAA, you come down hard on Memphis for every little thing when it comes to basketball, but you let the fucking football coaches go around beating other players up. Give me a break, man. What happens if the player turns around and punches him? Like then it's a narrative that the player was then it becomes like, well, why did the player react that way?
I mean, and I'll tell you what, Kirby Smart gets paid a lot of money. I hit his ass with a hefty fine too.
Of course. Like you just can't do that. Same thing with Kiki Hernandez. Deserves to be fined. I mean, I don't know if he deserves like a suspension, like from a game, but you either fine them or you suspend them because if you suspend them like that, they're not getting paid for that game. Same
Yeah.
thing with so whatever
So,
comes
so
up.
it kind of like, all right, so think about this. It kind of go all the way back to Saints Bounty Gate, right? Everybody was doing it, but you had to make the Saints as an example so people would stop. Same thing. I hate that it was my team, but nonetheless, have you heard anything of any players doing that anymore? No. Does it probably still happen? Probably under the radar. Yeah. But Not like you used to hear. You used to actively hear numerous teams doing these things. So I think whether we're talking about putting your hands on anybody or cussing on television or anything, you have to make somebody an example in order for people to understand.
Yeah. And that's all the attention we're gonna give Kirby Smart and his nonsense. LSU, Arkansas. Um,
Like I
trap
said,
game for LSU?
so what?
Trap game for LSU?
I mean,
They should win. They are a better team, I believe. They
but
should win.
here's your problem. Here's your problem. You're coming off a really hard fought game in overtime, emotional against an Arkansas team that had a bye week and is going to be at home. So I can honestly say, even as LSU being the better team, this is, to me, it's a true pick 'em game. I could see it going either way. And when you know how I feel about Arkansas fans, so this one scares me to death. Like usually, I'm like, man, I just want Ole Miss and Alabama. Those are like the two teams I want to beat every year. This year, just in particular, like just give me the Ole Miss Arkansas back to back, and we'll figure out Bama.
Yeah, you can't look past this one because you're going to Fayetteville and you're going into what's probably going to be hostile environment. Nothing like going to LSU, but
Well, LSU, let me tell you this, by the way, on that number 8 ranking, here's the thing. Everything levels itself out. LSU has the hardest remaining schedule in the SEC. It'll level itself out. If LSU's the number 8 team, then it'll show. If they're not, we'll know.
yeah, and it's only going like you said, it's only going to get more difficult as they go. But they need to start with this one game at a time. I think LSU goes in and beats them. I think it's going to come down to Nussmeier. Just doesn't have to play great; he just has to play good. Just can't turn.
And I guess going back to the Alabama-Tennessee game, I want Tennessee to win, like I said. But as far as what I just said about LSU, Alabama, is so assuming LSU beats Arkansas, then they'll have Alabama, on deck. It's better for LSU, win or lose, to Bama if Bama beats Tennessee, right? So in
Right.
theory, as an LSU fan, I should want Bama to win that game.
Yeah. I mean, I think that would help.
Because if you're going to lose, you want to lose to a top 7 team. Not if Alabama loses against Tennessee, they'll fall back to like 20. That's not who you want to lose to.
Yeah. What hurts LSU is the loss to USC that they shouldn't have because it makes the Alabama game and it makes this Arkansas game. It makes every game a must win because if they lose it, it's like, well, now they got 2 losses. Yeah, it's against probably whoever they lose to will be a top 5 team, but they're going to have this one pending loss hanging over them that other teams
Well,
won't.
I watched that USC Penn State game, and USC gave that game away. Penn State should not be ranked number 4.
Well, that's what happens when you win because people don't look at it as USC gave it away. They look at it as Penn State came roaring back.
Right. And I give them their credit. On the road, got it done. But I looked at that game and thought the same thing we thought about LSU, right? They're not number 8. Penn State's not number 4. I don't know their schedule, but I'm assuming because they haven't played, Ohio State or Oregon or any of the big dogs in the Big Ten. So I'm assuming that'll level itself out as well.
Yeah, definitely. NFL. Do we got it? Do we got to?
Hey, look, man. Here, I told you, I sent you a text. I knew at halftime or the Saints were going to lose, bro. I was dogging all 3 of my opponents in fantasy. It was clear that I was going to have a clean sweep in fantasy, and current to date, I have never ever won all 3 fantasy, and the Saints won. So I didn't figure it was going to change this week, and I texted you that. I was like, as soon as the Bucks took the lead, I was like, I knew the Saints were going to lose for that reason. Anyway, so I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised that Dallas lost to Detroit when you looked at Detroit's offense and Dallas's defense. However, in both game situations, I would not have expected the beatdown that ensued in either of them, especially with the Saints notched up, or not notched up, a 3-point lead at half. So I I'm gonna put it to you first, man. You were an advocate that Dak shouldn't have been paid that. Um, I got to watch that game yesterday, and obviously he's not the only problem, but you gotta. It's the way of the world, right? We're gonna look as bad as the defense was. You're gonna look at the quarterback, dude. What the hell?
I mean, you can't have red zone interceptions. You just can't. And for the life of me, why are we forcing the ball to Tolbert and Turpin when you got one of the best receivers in the league? If you're going to force the ball to anybody and turn the ball over in the red zone and the end zone at that, try to get it to your best receiver.
It should always be CeeDee Lamb first and then Jake Ferguson second.
I mean, yeah, because that's going to be your check down. But I will say, Tolbert and Turpin do a good job because CeeDee Lamb gets so much coverage, but like the running game is like un.
If you look at all right, to your point, Daniel, when you look at not even just the best quarterbacks, when you look at the best receivers, because some of the best receivers don't even play with the best quarterback. Like you can go to Minnesota, right, with Darnold and Jefferson. But when you look at the best receivers, you always see, 9, 10, 11 receptions a game. Like you said, you feed that guy. He will make the plays. He will get open. Throw him the ball to where only he can get it. All those things. You have to do those things when you have a guy like that.
He was targeted. Here's my issue, and this happens a lot. CeeDee Lamb was targeted 14 times and only had 7 receptions. So 50% of the plays that you go to him on, he's only getting a chance to do something in 50%. That's got to be more. Like if you're going to go to him 14 times, he needs to have 11 receptions. Like he can't be 50%. Like it's
The formula for
but like Jalen Tolbert, all right. You targeted him 5 times, he had 4 receptions. Turpin 7 times, he had 4 receptions. I mean, like you go to Jake Ferguson, who you target 4 times, he had 3 receptions. Like that's the kind of percentage that you've got to have with your receivers, especially your best guy.
Well, here's what you need to do with him specifically. I think when you look at his abilities, him and Debo Samuel really remind me of each other. And if you watch San Francisco, whether it's, just quick little hitches, whether it's a jet sweep, whether lining him up in the backfield because they don't have McCaffrey right now. And being that the Dallas doesn't have a great running back situation, find any way you can. That's what San Francisco does. They say, I'm going to put the ball in my best player's hands and let him make things happen. And if you look at last week, because I'm in fantasy on Thursday night, and what did he do? He got a little 3-yard pass, broke the tackle, and the next thing you know, he took off for a 70-yard touchdown. That's what guys like CD and Debo do because they're so strong, physical, fast. I mean, they are the most superior athlete on the field. So what you do is no matter what, you find all these different ways to get him the ball.
You know what the difference is between those 2 scenarios is that you see Debo, whether he gets the ball or not, in the backfield a lot. I wouldn't say a lot, but like CeeDee Lamb, when he goes into the backfield, he's getting the ball.
Right. So
He
they know
went in the
it's
backfield one time this past game and got the ball for 2 yards. And so like it's there's no like
creativity.
There's no like disguise. Like you just key on that. And if you're only willing to run your offense and put him in the backfield one time and you give him the ball that one time, then every time he goes there, like shit, do a flea flicker like the Lions did. Do something creative where
They started having fun.
it was
They,
clear
they,
they were.
they got wild and throwing touchdowns already up 30. Whoa, boy.
I mean, when they scored after Dallas went for it on 4th and 2 in Detroit territory or in Dallas in their own territory, and they turned the ball over on downs, and then the Lions scored. those guys were like, we are way better than this team. This isn't even going to be a game.
Look, they were kind of look. Me and Justin are sitting there. I got Montgomery. He's got whatchamacallit, Gibbs, and we're like, cool. They're gonna run the ball. Maybe we get another touchdown. And they come out first play and throw a damn dart to St. Brown for a touchdown. And I was like, these boys are clowning. But here's the question we got to get to, Daniel. I don't see any quick, fast improvements, and y'all's schedule is a absolute gauntlet. So clearly, we know the good news, right? McCarthy's gone.
I mean,
because y'all got L's coming. Because there's no way you can make quick fixes to beat some of the teams y'all got. I remember they showed it on the graphic. Like y'all don't have anything easy for a while.
So if you lose to the 49ers, which is, in 2 weeks, get a bye week, thank God. If you go out and you lose to the 49ers and you get blown out, you could be in the scenario where the hot seat is super hot. If you go out and you lose to the Falcons, it's even hotter. But if you go and you lose your third in a row to the Eagles at home, you're going to be fired.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, because then you got the Texans and they're good. Then you got another divisional game against the Commanders, and they're leading the division right now.
Yeah, like I said, there's not one bad team on that list.
Right. Then you have the Giants again. Then Joe Burrow and the Bengals. You have the Panthers.
Well, by then it's too late. Yeah. So the Giants and the Panthers are the good looking games, but they're too far down the line. So
the question is who takes over?
The best thing that could happen for you, Stefanski is a great coach and has been put in the most miserable situation by having to play Deshaun Watson. And they were talking about it on This Morning, but they weren't talking about the Cowboys. They were saying that he could go to Jacksonville and take that job right now and fix Trevor Lawrence. But what an even better scenario, because I could care less about Jacksonville getting fixed. What if they fire from the Browns and he can go just walk over to Dallas, where he's actually got a lot more talent than he would in Jacksonville? Because that poor dude, he's literally being forced to play Deshaun Watson, who is terrible.
Yeah, and Deshaun Watson, I don't even think cares. He's like,
you were talking about self infractions with Kirby Smart. If I'm fancy, I fire myself.
I fire myself.
I can't coach this guy anymore. I'm out.
Could you imagine? That would be the most Brown thing that the Browns could ever have happened.
I mean, look, we talked about this already a few weeks ago. Even with 3 picks, right? Baker Mayfield's throwing that ball around the yard, and it's like, and then you're watching the Browns, who can't even get an offensive touchdown, literally has not scored 20 in any of their 6 games. Like, and you're watching Baker, and it's like, God, Baker's got to be the happiest guy in the world.
For sure. All right, let's get to it. We got to wrap this up. Contender, pretender. All right, all 4-2 in the NFC. Falcons, contender or pretender?
I'm gonna go pretender. As much as I believe in Kirk Cousins and the weapons, I don't think they have a good enough defense to legitimately compete for the NFC. What about you?
As much as I like Kirk Cousins, when he is good, he is really good. But when he's bad, he's really bad. And I still think he's not consistently good enough to really call them a contender. And I say that because he's had 6 games with a brand new team, and
well, and their 2 big wins that they got of their 3 wins, they're 3-2. He had to throw. He had to throw for 450 and 500. Are you going to bank on that every game?
No. And Drake London is thriving with Kirk Cousins. Just letting you know. Packers, contender, pretender. In my opinion, they're a contender because, I mean, you look at the success they had last year, and you get, your quarterback back, and he looks pretty good. And, I mean, I would say 4-2 is pretty good for them and probably what you might expect. So I'm going to take them as a contender.
I'm gonna take them as a contender as well. I think they're really good. I didn't expect Jordan Love to take a step this fast, and I mean, if you look at the receiving core of guys doing it, we know them because they play fantasy. But like, man, he doesn't have any big names, right? Like he's throwing the ball around the yard to guys everywhere, throwing touchdowns. So I mean, shout out to the offensive coordinator and shout out to Jordan Love and all those guys. And yeah, I mean, absolute contender.
The Bears. Do we even need to say it?
Yeah, I do because you saw me remove myself from a group text because Mike and Randy genuinely believe Caleb Williams is good and they're contenders because they're 4-2. But do you know, Daniel? Do you know that all four teams they have beaten have one win apiece? They're beneficiaries of a schedule and they're fixing to get humbled real fast. But and they got Washington coming up, and I can't wait for them to see the mistake of not drafting Jaden Daniels. But yeah, they're beating up on nobody's. Yes, it's a good defense. Caleb is improving. I get it. You play who you play and whatever, but I'm not buying, especially because if we think the Packers are contenders, and guess what? We know the Lions are contenders, and obviously the undefeated
I,
Vikings are contenders. They can't all four be contenders in that division. That's never happened, and I don't think it ever will. You can't. They all have to play each other. Somebody's going to have to be the one that's at the bottom.
is it possible at the end of the year we look back and we go, "Hey, the NFC North was the best team or it was the best division in football."
I absolutely think we're going to because I undoubtedly think the top three are going to make the playoffs. They're going to have three teams in because tell
Yeah.
me another division in the NFC that looks great, right? Like maybe the Falcons and the Bucks get in, but I only think one team gets in from the East, and right now the West is wide ass open.
Yeah.
3-3 is leading the division.
I feel you. All right. Bucks. Uh, I'll say contender. I mean, they're not they're winning games and they're not doing anything. I don't think they're doing anything outlandish and crazy. I think opening up the year with a win against the Commanders team that obviously is pretty good, and then beating a Lions team that clearly is pretty good. I think it was kind of an anomaly against the Broncos where you just didn't play well, and then you beat the Eagles, which we think they're a pretty good team. Then you drop one to the Falcons with what, but we talked about like what the Falcons had to do to beat you.
Yeah.
And so, like, when you look at those 2 scenarios, I think the Broncos loss was just an outlier, just, you know, you had a dud in the season, and then the Falcons is just a defensive bumble where you let a guy throw
Yeah,
for
I think the Bucks
yards.
are a better team than are a better team than the Falcons. I think you have to at least say contender for the simple factor they're the clear best team in the South. And when you look at how Baker is playing, you look at the weapons he has. We've talked about Godwin clearly, but you still Evans is still doing his thing. I think the only thing is that run game, right? I think in order to take it to that next level, they need to be more balanced. It can't be so heavily relied on Baker to carry them. And so I know they don't have a star running back there. They got a committee, but they got to find a way to be more balanced. I think that's why the Saints were able to get three interceptions, right? He was making mistakes. He was throwing the ball so many times. So if they find some balance, I think overall I'll feel better about them. But to me, they're the clear-cut best team in the South. So you have to say you're a contender as a division winner itself.
Yep. Baker ain't afraid to throw it now. He'll be a gunslinger. I don't think that's what you need him to do to win games, but I mean, he'll throw some balls out there. Washington, the Commanders. Obviously, I mean, I think we're both on the same page where we think they're contenders. I mean, I look at
They played great yesterday. Their defense couldn't stop Lamar and them, but Jaden against a great Baltimore defense still looked fantastic. Didn't even have a starting running back, Brian Robinson Jr., and they still were able to move with it. And so It's kind of like we were just talking about, with the Bucks making some tweaks. If that defense can tighten up, but I like it's different, right? We were just saying we don't want Baker to have to do too much. There's different kind of guys, right? Jaden, we saw it in college, and we've already seen it through 6 games. He's a guy I believe as a rookie you can lean on him to do everything. I really do.
And he's fresh enough and young enough to where he can take a lot of that right now.
Well, he doesn't actually take a lot of hits. He reminds me of the early Russell Wilson, who always smartly gets out of bounds or slides right before he gets hit. He protects himself.
No, I'm just saying, like, the grind of, like, rushing out of the pocket, scrambling, like, that all takes its toll and wear and tear, like, on your body, like, as opposed to a guy who's gonna drop
Which I
back.
knew I meant to mention something, and you didn't tell me your revelation about the Saints Bucks. But let me tell you what I enjoyed about watching Spencer Rattler. I told you my biggest problem with Derek Carr is he's scared to get hit. And as soon as the defensive line breaks through or anybody's coming at him, he starts running backwards towards the opposite end zone and will not try to move the pocket or do anything. Watching Spencer Rattler move outside the pocket, throw balls on the run when he needed to was such a revelation that, like, even if he's not as good as Derek Carr, it's just more fun to watch.
Yeah, so here's my revelation, and we'll get out of here. Spencer Rattler is, despite losing the game, he's I think, going to be a pretty good quarterback, and I think he can be a good quarterback for the Saints. A lot of the reasons that you said, I think his problem is just not having experience being a starting quarterback. He was out NFL'd in the second
and
half.
it didn't help. They wouldn't have
That's what
won, but it didn't help not having Olave
well,
either.
yeah.
Like, and then the Bucks have always how many years in a row have been like the top run defense? Kamara couldn't get 2 yards, so you can't establish a run, and you don't have your top receiver. Those aren't exactly the best dynamics for a rookie in his first game. But like you said, there was more than enough good. I felt great about it, but I'll take it over a guy who's scared to play football in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Take it all day. Something fresh, something new. But with that, you ready to get out of here?
Yeah, man. Tonight, dude. Zimmerman, SEC or Mississippi State, 9 wins in a row, 6 SEC wins in a row, setting all sorts of new records, attendance records. And I mean, Daniel, they won last night 5-0. These girls are absolutely working, folks. And this dude's fiery. I can't wait to get his story and hear about it.
So Nick Zimmerman tonight. It's going to be a good one. Check us out. Obviously, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, you name it, wherever you stream your podcast. And we'll see you guys back then. As always, peace.